Your soulmate isn't the same person anymore, and neither is your love. Sometimes life changes so quietly that you don't even realize the person you once called your forever has slowly turned into someone else. And the strangest part is, it's not just them who has changed, you have too. There was a time when both of you could understand each other without saying a word, when silence felt comfortable instead of heavy, when just being around each other was enough to make everything feel right. Back then, love was simple. It wasn't something you had to question or analyze, it just existed, naturally and effortlessly. You didn't have to think twice before sharing your thoughts, your fears, your dreams, because you knew they would understand, or at least try to. But now, things feel different. Conversations don't flow the same way, laughter doesn't linger as long, and even the pauses between words feel unfamiliar. It's not that you don't care anymore, it's that the way you care has changed, shaped by time, experiences, and the silent distance that neither of you noticed growing. You start to realize that the version of them you fell in love with exists only in your memories, frozen in moments that no longer reflect who they are today. And maybe the hardest truth to accept is that the version of you they loved doesn't exist anymore either. People grow, they evolve, they carry new wounds, new perspectives, new priorities, and sometimes, those changes don't align the way they used to. It doesn't mean the love was fake or that it didn't matter. It just means it belonged to a different time, a different version of both of you. And now, you're standing here, holding onto something that once felt permanent, trying to understand when exactly it started to slip away. You wonder if it was gradual or if there was a specific moment when everything shifted. But the truth is, love doesn't always end with a clear breaking point. Sometimes it just fades into something unrecognizable, something quieter, something that doesn't quite feel like home anymore. And that realization doesn't come all at once, it comes in waves, in small moments where you notice the difference, where you feel the absence of what once was. It's in the way you hesitate before reaching out, in the way their name doesn't light up your world the same way anymore, in the way you both try, but somehow still feel disconnected. And yet, there's still a part of you that wants to hold on, not necessarily to who they are now, but to who they used to be. Because letting go doesn't just mean losing them, it means letting go of the memories, the dreams, the version of yourself that existed when you loved them without hesitation. And that kind of loss is never easy to accept. But maybe the real pain isn't just that they've changed, it's that your love has changed too. It's no longer that all-consuming feeling that once made everything seem possible. It's softer now, quieter, sometimes even uncertain. You don't look at them the same way, and deep down, you know they don't look at you the same way either. There's no dramatic ending, no loud goodbye, just a slow realization that what you have now isn't what it used to be. And you start to question everything. Was it real? Did it mean as much as it felt? Or was it just a phase, something that was never meant to last? But love isn't defined by how long it stays the same, it's defined by how deeply it was felt when it existed in its truest form. And maybe that's what makes this so hard to accept, knowing that something so real can still change, can still drift apart, can still become something unfamiliar. You find yourself caught between holding on and letting go, between remembering what was and accepting what is. Because even though they're still here, in some way, the person you fell in love with is gone. And maybe you are too. Maybe the love you're grieving isn't just about them, it's about who you were when everything felt certain, when love didn't feel complicated, when forever didn't feel like a question. And now, you're left with the quiet understanding that sometimes, people don't fall out of love, they just grow into different versions of themselves, versions that no longer fit together the way they once did. And that doesn't make either of you wrong. It just means that love, like everything else, isn't immune to change. And sometimes, the hardest part of loving someone isn't holding on, it's learning how to accept that what you had belongs to the past, even if a part of you still wishes it could exist in the present. And maybe the most confusing part of all of this is that nothing terrible really happened. There was no big fight that ended everything, no betrayal that shattered your trust in a single moment, no clear reason you can point to and say, this is where it all went wrong. Instead, it feels like something much quieter, something almost invisible. It's like watching a sunset. You don't notice the exact second daylight disappears, but suddenly, it's dark. That's what this kind of change feels like. One day you're laughing together like nothing could ever come between you, and then one day you realize you haven't truly connected in a long time. You still talk, but it feels different. You still care, but it feels distant. And the hardest part is trying to explain something that doesn't have a clear explanation. Because how do you tell someone that you miss the way things used to be when everything technically still exists? How do you say, I miss you, when they're standing right in front of you? It's a strange kind of grief, the kind where you're mourning something that hasn't fully disappeared, but isn't the same anymore. You start replaying memories in your mind, holding on to the small details that once made everything feel alive, the late-night conversations that never seemed to end, the effortless laughter, the way you both used to show up for each other without hesitation. And now, even though those memories still exist, they feel like they belong to another life, another version of reality that you can't quite return to. You begin to question if you changed too much, if they changed too much, or if this was always inevitable. Maybe growth pulled you in different directions. Maybe life added layers to both of you that don't quite align anymore. Or maybe love was never meant to stay the same forever, no matter how much we want it to. And that realization is both painful and freeing at the same time. Painful because it forces you to accept that not everything beautiful is permanent, and freeing because it reminds you that change doesn't always mean failure. Sometimes, it just means that a chapter has quietly come to an end, even if the story itself hasn't completely finished. You also start to notice the subtle ways in which you've been holding on, even when your heart has already begun to let go. It's in the way you reread old messages, searching for the feeling they once gave you. It's in the way you compare who they are now to who they used to be, hoping to find glimpses of that familiar version. It's in the way you stay, not because everything still feels right, but because you're afraid of what it would mean to walk away. Because walking away doesn't just mean losing them, it means accepting that the love you believed in has changed, that the future you imagined together might no longer exist in the way you once saw it. And that's terrifying. Because starting over means stepping into the unknown, leaving behind something that once felt certain, something that once felt like home. But at the same time, staying in something that no longer feels the same has its own kind of pain. It's the quiet kind, the kind that doesn't always show on the surface but slowly builds inside you. It's the feeling of being present but not truly connected, of loving someone but not feeling understood the way you used to. And deep down, you start to realize that love isn't just about history or memories, it's about how it feels in the present moment. And if the present feels heavy, uncertain, or distant, then no amount of past happiness can fully fix that. That doesn't mean the love wasn't real. It just means it has changed into something else, something that may not be enough anymore, even if it once was. And maybe that's the lesson hidden inside all of this, that love isn't meant to stay frozen in time. It grows, it shifts, it evolves, and sometimes, it grows in different directions for two people who once felt perfectly aligned. And when that happens, you're left with a choice that no one ever really prepares you for, to keep holding on to what used to be, or to slowly accept what is, even if it means letting go of something you never thought you would have to lose. At some point you stop trying to find the exact moment things changed because you realize there was no single moment at all. It was a series of small shifts that slowly created distance between two people who once felt inseparable. You remember how easy everything used to be. How you never had to overthink a message or wonder if your feelings were too much. You were simply yourself and that was enough. But now even the simplest conversations feel heavy. You think before you speak. You hold back parts of yourself. Not because you want to, but because something inside you knows it does not feel the same anymore. And that truth is hard to face. Because when love changes like this, it does not break loudly. It just becomes unfamiliar. You start to notice how silence feels different. It is no longer peaceful. It feels like something is missing. You sit next to them and still feel alone in a way you never did before. And that is when it hits you. The connection you once had is no longer as strong as it used to be. Not gone completely, but not the same either. And you try to fix it. You really do. You put in effort. You try to bring back the old spark. But some things are not meant to be recreated. Some things belong to a version of you and them that no longer exists. And accepting that feels like letting go of a part of yourself. What makes it even harder is that there is still love there. It has not disappeared. It just feels different now. Quieter. Less certain. You still care about them. You still want the best for them. But the way your heart responds to them has changed. And you cannot force it back to what it used to be. You cannot go back to a time when everything felt effortless. Because both of you have lived through things that shaped you into who you are now. And sometimes those changes do not match anymore. You begin to understand that love is not just about holding on. It is also about knowing when something has run its course. Not in a dramatic way. Not with anger or blame. Just with a quiet understanding that things are not what they once were. And maybe they never will be again. That realization hurts in a different way. It is not sharp pain. It is slow and deep. It stays with you in the quiet moments. When you are alone with your thoughts. When you remember how it all started. And how you thought it would never end like this. But life does not always follow the plans we make in our hearts. Sometimes it takes us in directions we never expected. And the people we thought would walk beside us forever slowly become part of our past. Not because they meant less. but because you both became different people. And maybe that is the truth we struggle with the most. That love can be real and still not last. That two people can mean everything to each other and still grow apart. And learning to accept that is one of the hardest things you will ever have to do. There comes a moment when you stop asking questions you know will never have clear answers. You stop wondering why things feel different and start accepting that they just do. Not everything in life gives you closure in the way you expect. Sometimes there is no final conversation that explains everything. No perfect ending that makes the pain easier to carry. Just a quiet understanding that something once beautiful has changed its shape. And you are left to make peace with that on your own. You begin to notice how much energy it takes to hold on to something that no longer feels natural. It feels like you are trying to keep a memory alive instead of living in the present. You smile at them, but it does not reach the same depth as before. You listen, but you no longer feel the same connection in their words. And slowly you start to understand that love is not supposed to feel this heavy all the time. It is not supposed to feel like something you have to constantly fix. Real love flows. It grows with you. It does not make you feel like you are holding onto something that is slipping through your hands no matter how tightly you try to hold it. And when you realize this, it changes something inside you. Not suddenly but gently. Like a shift in your heart that tells you it is okay to stop forcing what no longer fits. You also begin to see yourself more clearly. Not just as someone who loved them, but as someone who has grown beyond that version of life. You realize how much you have changed. How your needs are different now. How the things you once accepted without question no longer feel right to you. And that is not a bad thing. It means you have evolved. It means you have learned. Sometimes we outgrow people not because they did something wrong but because our paths are no longer the same. And that is one of the most difficult truths to accept because it does not come with anger. It comes with a quiet kind of sadness. The kind that sits in your chest and reminds you of what once was. You do not hate them. You do not regret loving them. If anything, you are grateful for it. Because that love shaped you. It taught you things you would have never learned otherwise. It showed you what it means to feel deeply. And even if it does not last forever, it still matters. It always will. But now you start to understand that holding on to it in its old form is only keeping both of you stuck. Love is not meant to trap you in the past. It is meant to grow with you or gently let you go. And maybe that is what is happening here. Not a sudden ending but a slow release. A quiet goodbye that does not need to be spoken out loud. Just felt and accepted. And as hard as it is, you begin to let go in small ways. You stop expecting things to go back to how they used to be. You stop searching for signs that the old version of them is still there. You stop holding on to memories as if they can fix the present. Instead, you start focusing on what is real right now. On how you feel today. And that honesty with yourself is what starts to set you free. Because deep down you always knew. You just were not ready to face it. But now you are. Not completely. Not perfectly. But enough to take the first step. And that step matters. Because letting go is not a one-time decision. It is something you do again and again until your heart finally understands what your mind has been trying to tell you. And maybe one day you will look back at this love without pain. Maybe you will remember it for what it was instead of what it is not anymore. Maybe you will thank it for the role it played in your life instead of wishing it stayed the same. And that does not mean it was not your soulmate. Maybe they were. Just not forever. Maybe they were meant to meet you at a certain point in your life. To walk with you for a while. To change you in ways no one else could. And then to leave when it was time for both of you to grow into something new. And that kind of love is not a failure. It is a chapter. A meaningful one. Even if it does not last till the end of the story, and maybe the hardest part is not even the letting go itself but everything that comes after it. The silence feels louder than ever. The absence feels real in ways you were not prepared for. You wake up and for a moment everything feels normal, then reality slowly settles in and reminds you that things have changed. Not in a dramatic way but in a quiet, permanent way. You no longer have that person in the same way you used to. Their presence in your life has shifted and you are left trying to understand what your life looks like without the version of them you held so close. It feels unfamiliar at first. Almost like you are learning how to exist again without something that once felt essential to you. You catch yourself reaching for them in small ways. Wanting to share something random. Wanting to tell them about your day. Wanting to hear their voice just because it used to make everything feel okay. But now there is a pause. A space where something used to be. And that space teaches you a different kind of strength. The kind that does not come from holding on but from learning how to stand on your own again. You start to rebuild yourself in ways you never thought you would have to. Not because you are broken but because a part of your life has ended and you have to create something new in its place. You begin to rediscover who you are outside of that love. What makes you happy without their involvement? What your days look like when they are no longer the center of your thoughts. And at first it feels strange. Even a little empty. But slowly it starts to feel like growth. You realize that you are still whole. That your life still has meaning. That love did not define you completely even if it once felt like it did. And that realization is powerful. Because it reminds you that while people can be a big part of your story, they are not the entire story. You are still here. Still moving forward. Still becoming someone new with every passing day. And maybe that is something you had forgotten while you were holding on so tightly to what used to be. There are moments when memories come back unexpectedly. A song. A place. A random thought that reminds you of how things once felt. And for a second it hurts again. Not as intensely as before but enough to remind you that what you had was real. And that is okay. Healing does not mean forgetting. It means remembering without feeling like it breaks you. It means being able to look back and accept that something beautiful existed even if it does not exist anymore. And over time those memories start to feel softer. Less painful. More like a distant chapter instead of an open wound. You stop asking yourself what you could have done differently. You stop blaming yourself or them. Because you understand now that not everything is meant to be fixed. Some things are meant to be felt and then released. And that understanding brings a kind of peace you did not think was possible before. And maybe one day you will meet someone again. Not as a replacement but as a new beginning. Someone who fits the version of you that you have become now. And it will feel different. Not the same as before. Not better or worse. Just different. Because you are different now. Wiser. More aware. More in tune with what you need and what you deserve. And you will carry the lessons of your past love with you. Not as baggage but as growth. As something that shaped you into who you are today. And when that day comes you will not compare. You will not try to recreate what you had before. Because you will understand that every connection is unique. Every love has its own meaning. And that is what makes it special. But until that day comes you learn to be okay on your own. You learn to find peace in your own company. You learn that love is not just something you give to others but something you also give to yourself. And that is where true healing begins. Not when you forget them but when you stop needing them to feel complete. When your happiness no longer depends on what used to be. When you can look at your life and see possibilities instead of loss. And that does not happen overnight. It takes time. It takes patience. It takes moments of doubt and moments of clarity. But slowly you get there. Step by step. Day by day. And in the end you understand something important. Your soulmate may not always be the person who stays forever. Sometimes they are the person who changes you in ways no one else could. The person who teaches you what love feels like. The person who helps you grow even if they are not meant to stay in your life permanently. And that does not make the connection any less meaningful. If anything, it makes it more real. Because it existed when it needed to. It shaped you when you needed it the most. And even though it has changed, it will always be a part of who you are. Not something you lost but something you experienced. Something that helped you become stronger. And maybe that is what love is really about. Not holding on forever but learning and growing through every phase it takes you through. And when you finally understand that, you stop seeing the ending as something sad. You start seeing it as something necessary. Something that made space for the next chapter of your life to begin, and somewhere in the middle of all this healing you begin to notice a quiet shift inside you that you did not expect. It is not loud or sudden but it is real. The same heart that once felt heavy now feels a little lighter. The same thoughts that once kept you stuck now start to loosen their grip. You are not completely over it, and maybe a part of you never will be, but you are no longer drowning in it the way you used to. You begin to understand that moving on is not about forgetting or replacing what you had. It is about learning how to carry it differently. It is about making peace with the fact that some people are not meant to stay in your life forever, even if they once felt like they were everything. And this acceptance does not come from giving up on love. It comes from respecting yourself enough to not stay stuck in something that no longer fits who you are becoming. You start to see how much strength it takes to let go without anger. To walk away without turning love into hate. To accept an ending without needing to blame anyone for it. And that kind of strength changes you. It makes you softer in some ways and stronger in others. It teaches you that not every ending has to be messy to be real. Some endings are quiet and still carry deep meaning. You also begin to forgive in a way that feels different from before. Not just forgiving them but forgiving yourself too. For the times you held on longer than you should have. For the times you ignored what your heart was trying to tell you. For the moments you thought you were not enough or that you could have done something to keep things the same. You realize now that love is not something you can control like that. You cannot force it to stay the same. You cannot stop people from growing in directions that do not include you. And that is not your fault. That is just how life works sometimes. This understanding lifts a weight off your chest. Because you stop carrying guilt that was never yours to begin with. You stop replaying old moments and searching for mistakes. You start to accept that you did what you could with the version of yourself you were at that time. And that is enough. That has always been enough. As time passes, you begin to reconnect with parts of yourself that you had forgotten. Things that once made you happy before love became such a big part of your life. Small habits. Simple joys. Moments that belong only to you. And these things slowly start to fill the spaces that once felt empty. Not in a way that replaces what you lost, but in a way that reminds you that your life is still full of meaning. You start to enjoy your own company again. You start to feel comfortable in your own thoughts. And that is something you did not realize you needed. Because somewhere along the way you had started to depend on someone else for a sense of completeness. And now you are learning how to give that to yourself. And that is one of the most important lessons you can ever learn. Because when you find peace within yourself, you no longer chase people to fill a void. You choose them because they add to your life, not because you need them to feel whole. And maybe one day you will look back at this love without any heaviness at all. You will remember it as something that shaped you but did not break you. Something that taught you but did not define you completely. And you will feel grateful. Not because it lasted forever, but because it existed at all. Because not everyone gets to experience a love that changes them deeply. Even if it does not stay, it still leaves something valuable behind. And that value stays with you. In the way you understand people. In the way you express your feelings. In the way you recognize what is right for you and what is not. And that is something no ending can take away from you. And as you continue moving forward, you start to trust life a little more. You stop fearing endings as much as you used to. You begin to understand that every phase has its purpose. That every connection comes into your life for a reason, even if that reason is not always clear at the beginning. And this trust makes you braver. It allows you to open your heart again without being controlled by fear. Because now you know that even if things do not last forever, you will be okay. You have already been through that. You have already learned how to let go and rebuild yourself. And that knowledge gives you a quiet confidence that cannot be taken away from you. And in the end, you come to a simple but powerful realization. Your soulmate was never just one fixed person who would stay the same forever. Maybe your soulmate was someone who met you at a certain point in your life and walked with you until it was time for both of you to grow in different directions. Maybe they were meant to change you, not complete you. And maybe you were meant to do the same for them. And when you look at it this way, the ending does not feel like a loss anymore. It feels like a transformation. Like something that had to happen for you to become who you are today. And that understanding brings you a kind of peace that no explanation ever could. Because you finally stop asking why it ended and start appreciating what it gave you. And that is when you truly move forward. Not by leaving the past behind completely, but by carrying it with acceptance instead of pain. And that is what healing really looks like. Quiet, steady and real, and in the end you realize that not every love story is meant to last forever, but that does not make it incomplete. Some stories are meant to change you, not stay with you. Some people are meant to walk beside you only for a certain part of your life and then slowly become a memory that you carry instead of a presence you hold. And that is okay. Because what you had was real. The feelings were real. The connection was real. Even if it does not exist in the same way anymore, it still mattered. It still shaped you into someone stronger, someone more aware, someone who understands love in a deeper way. You stop looking at the ending as something that broke you and start seeing it as something that built you. Because it taught you how to love and how to let go. It taught you that not everything beautiful is meant to stay, and that does not make it any less meaningful. You learn that closure does not always come from someone else. Sometimes it comes from within. From accepting that things changed and that it is okay to move forward without all the answers. And as you take that final step forward, you feel a sense of calm that you did not think was possible before. Not because everything is perfect, but because you are no longer fighting reality. You are no longer holding on to something that no longer exists in the same way. You are allowing yourself to grow beyond it. And that is where your real journey begins. Not in finding someone new, but in becoming someone new. Someone who understands that love is not about possession or permanence, but about experience and growth. Someone who knows that even if your soulmate is no longer the same person and your love is no longer what it used to be, it still served its purpose in your life. And maybe that is enough. Maybe that is more than enough. Because at the end of the day you did not lose love. You experienced it. And that experience will stay with you in ways that no ending can ever take away.